there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
It's an exciting time to be involved in Bitcoin Cash at the moment.
During that whole war, Lightning versus big blocks, like were we the bad guys? Were we the ones that weren't listening?
Fundamentally, we believe in markets, transparency, and tokenization.
Come on, you gotta come stronger than that, you know, like...
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode number 91, traveling on BCH and BCH momentum, featuring Ray uses Bitcoin Cash live and in person. Today is Monday, the 4th of September, 2023. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is doing the producing, same as always. And our guest is a Bitcoin Cash YouTuber, a passionate Bitcoin Cash adopter, and an evangelist, I guess I would say as well too. Welcome to the show, Ray. How do you get into Bitcoin?
Thank you very much, Jeremy and Jet, for having me today. So my story with Bitcoin is, it's actually sort of quite a complex story. So I'll start from the beginning. I was made aware of Bitcoin. This would have been back in 2017. So I was actually aware of Bitcoin. 2017.
No, 2007.
2007, I beg your pardon, sorry. Yeah. So this was just when there was initial whispers of Bitcoin, which and it was going to be announced that there's going to be this brand new digital currency, and I was made aware of it, and I think there at the time the white paper hadn't been sort of fully finalized, but there had sort of been some initial discussions, and I was made aware that okay, there would be this new digital currency. It's going to be the currency of the future. It would be adopted by everyone. But at the same time, I did see a memorandum which showed that the path may not be exactly clear. So there might be, in the memo that I had seen, there would be a deviation from it, from the original Bitcoin, and then there'll be this new sort of cash equivalent. So from about 2007 till about 2016, I was sort of following the developments, hearing the stories of how people had made mega fortunes over those sort of 6 or 7 years. And then what I decided to do was I thought, okay, now's the time for me to actually sort of put some money down. And then in 2017, I had originally purchased some BTC. And then over time, of course, I could just see BTC veering away. I could see the technical problems with BTC. And I had to settle and use Bitcoin Cash. So what had happened was, I think from about 2021, I started an initial a small YouTube channel called Bitcoin Cash for everybody. I think that got taken down, and then about 6 months later, I had started a new channel called Ray Uses Bitcoin Cash, which is the purpose of this one was to basically simulate an end user experience. So I'm sort of like the typical Ray or the typical Joe, and I'd be the idea was to basically spend and replace Bitcoin Cash in my daily life. So that was sort of my sort of journey into crypto. And since then, I have been sort of vlogging. Over the last couple of months, I've taken a break from my current role, my current employment. So I've had more time to create a bit more Bitcoin Cash content. I had more time to put more energy into creating more Bitcoin Cash content too. And this is something I want to sort of grow and develop over time. So it's just something I'm really passionate to seeing, and I'm really grateful and thankful that we've got a great Bitcoin Cash community behind us as well, and that's sort of also encouraging and spurring me on. And we want to really get the ball moving now and just have this as peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about this initial document, because I've never heard anything like this. So this is before there was the white paper, before Satoshi was talking on the cryptography mailing list. But so I guess you would have some sort of conspiratorial angle then to how this whole thing came together, right?
That's right. So in 2007, I do remember seeing, so this was even before Bitcoin Talk was around.
Yes.
I had seen it looked like it was weird because the format was in a memo format on a private website. However, it had been linked previously to I think it was the Reddit forums at the time. They were discussing Bitcoin at the time, and they did actually
not on our Bitcoin though. Our Bitcoin wouldn't have been started on some other subreddit.
This would have been on some other subreddit. I can't remember the exact name at the moment, but what had happened was they had basically laid out a path, whoever the author was, and it looked like it had come from the format of the memo was actually, it was in sort of like a gold background with black font, so that instantly sort of, it smells like their leads, shall we say it that way. And I'd basically seen that that memo there, and they'd basically detailed to say, okay, the price would 10x at certain points in time, and it was roughly about every 4 years during sort of following from each block halving. And I think one of the price targets they had sort of given was around sort of 2025 mark. Potentially BTC could get to 250,000. But then after that, there was some talk of a massive global recession. There'll be, that's coming. We can even see that now in sort of the news. And then what I had seen is just suddenly, there wasn't that much detail, but peer-to-peer electronic cash would just take off. And I think also using a bit of common sense here, what I had seen was it's just out of necessity, really. People are going to need that medium of exchange. And we're now sort of seeing it even with BTC, where there's technical difficulties with BTC, particularly around the Lightning Network, but there's congestion, the mempool's bloated, and it has to be this digital equivalent. At the time, they didn't specify the name as such, but it was, they said it would be a cash equivalent of Bitcoin, which has to be Bitcoin Cash. And if I could just dive in a little bit deeper into that, and I'm really sort of going into my conspiratorial hat here, but I think there was a reason why NSA put that white paper out.
So you think it was all created by the government, Bitcoin and the white paper, Satoshi is...
From my angle, I think this was predetermined. Now, I know the grass movement's route is playing this quite a bit, but just from my angle too, I do think that there is a bit more going on here than just a plain old grassroots movement. I think there are certain forces potentially that could be making or encouraging peer-to-peer electronic cash.
So what would be the motivation for that? You know, because people would say, and they like to say, okay, well, what if Satoshi was the NSA or was these operations or whatever? And people say, well, it's open source, so it doesn't really matter, you know, unless there's a backdoor in the cryptography that's used, which as far as we know, obviously there isn't. Then it wouldn't matter because open source is open source. Anybody can, you know, don't trust, verify, right? But why would people usually say these kind of systems are designed to control people, right? And lock them down. And so why would there be that kind of entity releasing something, you know, encouraging so much freedom?
Yes, and I think it's one of these things. From my point of view, and what I'm thinking is that a lot of the potentially, if this was a project by the elite, shall we say, that everyone's aware that currency systems do last about 100 years now. I think we're past that point where the fiat system has only got, we're talking just a few years here, and then I think we're going into hyperinflation. There's no two ways around it. So I kind of think that they've just sort of left these markers here, and it's sometimes their way of speaking in code as well to other elites. And behind the scenes, I'm sure, and I've done a previous video on this where they are buying them up. Now, I have to also be a bit careful as to what I say, but I am aware that there are certain shall we say, very rich families which are in that tier, shall we say, that are actually buying up quite a lot of Bitcoin Cash. So there is that going on behind the scenes too. I'm sure about it.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously that's great to hear from our point of view, but it's really just the case that reality is stranger than fiction in many ways. You couldn't really rewrite the story of Bitcoin to be any stranger or more full of twists and turns or whatever. Personally, I'm so excited. I've talked before on the show about one day there's going to be a Bitcoin movie. And I don't know why that nobody has done this yet, because it would be a smash hit. But the BTC side, they can't really do it. Even though they got all the money, is their story would be fucking boring. Actually, if you stick to their narrative of how it all went down, right? But if you go from the BCH angle, there's so much that you could dive into there with the backstories and all the exchanges blowing up. Recently, we've seen, I saw some tweets, and I don't know if this is true or not, but people were joking about Sam Bankman-Fried going in. Apparently, he's now in prison, you know, he's in general population, and people were joking about, okay, well, he'll be introducing the cigarette swap, you know, perpetual futures to the local cells there, right? Like, but all these different characters and all the different shady stuff that's been going on, and especially if you have a more conspiratorial reading of things, there could be such a great movie with, you know, the anonymous Satoshi and who was involved behind the scenes and the propaganda campaign over Bitcoin, like everything. It would be so good. It could be such a good, it could even be a Netflix series. Like, I would love that. You know, you could do one each year could be a different season, or, you know, it could follow a different person's story, like famous people from crypto history, and get you would maybe mix in a bit of fiction, but you could have enough solid stuff that it made sense. So I'm really excited for something like that.
Yes, and also, if I could add as well, I'm very, very keen as well to see. I'm aware that Roger's creating a book at the moment. I'm very keen to see also from his angle as well, sort of what he's seen during his time as well, because I think it's sort of really been engaged with the discussions leading up to and after the hard fork, and I'm absolutely fascinated as well to see, because it sort of then will help to create more for like a holistic picture as to what happened during that time. So
yeah, that's going to be a must read for sure. I do have a copy of the blocksize war, and also what's that other one, the safety one, the Bitcoin standard, but I haven't read them yet. I mean, I do feel it is probably beholden on me to read them, just because you see so many people who have just read this or whatever, and that's their perspective, and so it would be helpful to know like what kind of propaganda they coming in with, and you see them all recommending it on Twitter and stuff to each other so much. But I picked it up and I had a quick look, and even just in the table of contents, there's all the different chapter names, and the last one is called Victory, and it just rang in my mind that you always see them saying, oh, this is an unbiased account that shows, and I thought the last chapter is called Victory, guys. Like, this is clearly not an unbiased account. And when I came back from having had a break between early 2018 and sort of 2020, and I came back to crypto and I thought, what's going on? I was surprised that so many people, the propaganda was so effective. It was so effective. And I couldn't believe that they all just bought into this narrative. But I guess if you hadn't been there, if you hadn't seen all the censorship live, or you never dug a little bit below the surface, you would never know any of that, right?
That's right, yes. And in fact, one thing I want to have a speak about a little bit is I did have a read of the Bitcoin Standard. It's very much theory, and I'm sure many, maybe a few other listeners have seen it's very much theory based. But speaking about, I think what happened was Saif Ad-Din had created another book called the Fiat Standard, and now this is quite humorous. So I had listened to this, was when I was in Gran Canaria just last week, and what had happened was I just had it as an audiobook, listened to it. I was sitting on the sofa. After the first chapter, I fell straight asleep. So Fiat, yeah, it's not the way to go.
Boring.
Has to be on chain.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. That's amazing. And this whole industry, you know, of Bitcoin, like podcasters and the books and so, they just sort of have this perpetual grift going. And I know it's quite ironic that I would be saying that, right? But it took so long. And I think still in the future, we'll see more of that, of the BCH side sort of pushing back, having its own channels, its own people telling its own stories and so forth. And the reason for that, I think, is just because the whole, like, it was all hanging on by a thread. Like the run that BCH has had so many twists and turns and problems. And people know when you're in a disaster, when you're in an emergency, the non-essentials get skipped over, right? People don't have time to be sitting around on podcasts. What about the history and yada, 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 when everybody's like, shit, we're already having a civil war and now we're having another one and people are just trying to run the nodes and fund the next, Flipstarter was built just so that the node software could carry on and maybe one conference in 2019 and then one in 2022, right? It's all happened at just the thinnest of margins. So we don't have that extra layer of sort of fat, I'll say, like that extra insulation that the BTC side had, of where they got huge price pumps. And so this whole industry develops of people that just go on these conference tours and just speak to these large crowds of people who don't really know, this from that. But there's like Tone Vays and Jimmy Song and Seyfedina Moose, and then Michael Saylor somehow got involved and decided he was going to, bet his whole company on it. And it's just this completely divergent history at this point between those two groups of people, really. Right?
Yes. And I think it's even comes down to even the engineering side and the whole philosophy. Like, for example, like with Gavin Andreessen and his very popular tweet that he said, Bitcoin Cash was originally what I was wanting to work on. And now we've seen all these devs sort of move over to Bitcoin Cash, which is fundamentally what the whole white paper and the NSA statement was based about. It was, this peer-to-peer electronic cash system. There was nothing about a settlement layer, nothing about store of value. It has to be, it always comes down to just that medium of exchange.
Yeah, well, money is ultimately, what you can trade to other people. And we were talking about just before this show that eventually people figure that out, right? Like you can buy some BTC, you can put it in your cold storage or whatever, and you can hodl it for a while and you can listen to a few podcasts. This was Paul Stortz was talking to me about that as well too, where there's just a limited amount of things, but when you first come to it, it seems like so much. It's overwhelming. All this new info and blah, blah, blah. So it takes you maybe a year or 2 years to read all that stuff, listen to a few of the podcasts, and then at some point you realize that they're just rehashing the same thing, right? You're not seeing progress being made year to year. And I think that's something that Bitcoin Cash, hopefully we're going to see more and more of. Is just, I was looking back at my Twitter thread that I have pinned on my profile of all the developments that have been happening in BCH. And that started it was 31st of March. So we're just past 5 months. And when you look at it, it's like, wow, this is some really cool stuff that's happened in just this last 5 months. So it will probably ramp up from there, right? As the community is definitely growing and once the foundations are built, right? Like we have the node stuff, that's good. You have the chip process, you have the protocol stuff. Now we have quite a few different wallets, and then things get into the more exciting parts once you've built those foundations. So I think we're sort of trending in the right direction in that regard.
Yes, and I also want to say, I want to take my hat off and say a huge thank you. All this would not be possible because of the devs. So I want to say a huge thank you. And it's amazing the amount of progress, particularly in the last 6 months. But I know even before that as well, devs have been working quietly in the background. So thank you so much, guys. I mean, you're changing the world. You're changing the world. Yeah,
they literally are. So speaking of the devs, we got to check in on our quick Selene update. I know I promised V 1.0.12. Callisti had some problems with the rollout of that. So instead, his plan is to just bundle it all into V 1.1, which is going to be quite a significant update. Probably not on the user side necessarily, but we're retooling a lot of the insides because the code that was originally written was just sort of an MVP, right? It was just to get it out there. And a lot of the stuff that is synchronous, we need to make that asynchronous so that essentially it can scale and be more performant as we're adding more and more things into the code base. So probably going to have to just wait a little bit on any big updates rolling out there. But I am excited for once we get that version out, then we're going to focus a lot more on actually releasing new features and so on, instead of just kind of working on the core. A lot of that will be resolved. And in that spirit, we also had our first session of Shadow Wizard session. I got on a call with Bitcoin Jason, Leo Beltran, and Mark Falzon was actually there a bit. And we did some product development. So you can find that on twitch.tv/the Bitcoin Cash podcast if you're interested to tune in and find out what that was like. But for people who've never worked in a, here we go, here he is in the chat, Jason. G'day, good to see you, mate. But if for people who've never worked in a tech company, it might be kind of an insight because it's a product development session where we're sitting down with the users, in this case, the onboarders, and talking to them about what's the problem you're having, what would be an ideal solution, maybe what would be some steps to get there, making some notes. And then obviously I'm going to go away and think about that and sort of formulate up a plan of attack, because they say every 1 minute of planning you do spends 10 minutes of engineering, of execution. So it's really important to get those foundations right. We will be doing more of that kind of thing in the future. I do really want the community to be able to see in an open source way how we're building Selene, and then how we're building other products as well too, like just in the same way that content creators like you can be transparent about what's going on, in the same way we can do some of that on the tech side, I think.
Yes, and I think I'd also like to talk a little bit about Selene too, and just say I'm really impressed with the particularly the rollout schedule. I think it's I know both yourself, Jeremy, and Callisti have done an enormous amount of work sort of behind the scenes getting scheduling updates. I think I saw previously there was a slide, 12 language packs within a week. That's just one small element of it, but there's a huge amount of effort and work being put into the wallets. And in fact, actually, just before coming on the podcast, Jeremy and I went for a coffee, bought the coffee. Jeremy gave it in a Bitcoin Cash. So this is another way we can use Bitcoin Cash, you see. So when you've got a group of mates, and perhaps maybe in the future we might do like a laser tag session or something like that, and one person can, for example, then settle the bill, and then we can use the technology just like Selene, and then you can basically collect a payment from everyone, and you can do the same with meals, restaurants, drinks. And it's just a really, really handy way of collecting the payment from everyone and sort of settling the bill there. So this is a really, really useful tool. And I have, though, a few questions sort of about Selene.
Yeah.
And
okay.
So when I went, for example, to Slovenia, I was using Go Crypto. Now, I'm aware that Go Crypto are using the bitcoin.com wallet, and I think they have their own Go Crypto wallet. Would there be potentially in the future maybe a chance to use some integration with Go Crypto, or do you think that could be something that we may look into, or would we solely be focusing on like the peer-to-peer end user experience? Just curious from my
Yeah. Well, there's kind of two answers that really jump to mind to that. So the first one is there's a thing, I think it's called BIP70, which is the payment protocol that people have tried using, I think with Go Crypto as well, where it gives you a QR code that it's not just like the regular, you scan the QR code and maybe it has an amount, that would be a usual like address. Instead, it actually shows you like a custom payment thing. So when you scan it, it knows that you've paid this exact one. It records an invoice number. It records the exchange rate at the time and like the price source, I think, a couple of other details like that, right? So that's a specific type of BCH address, which Selene actually doesn't support yet. But we've had people ask about that and so on. It is on our roadmap. We will at some point do that, obviously, so that you can pay those Go Crypto invoices, or maybe other people who are using that BIP70 payment protocol, because it is in fairly wide use. So that's the first thing, and we'll just need to support that because that's just an open source standard. Separately, and I would have to look into this, Go Crypto might also have a proprietary thing, like the specific integration that they've done with bitcoin.com or with their own wallet. And I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if it's just the BIP70 stuff, or whether I sort of in the back of my mind, I have a suspicion they might have customized it a little bit, because I think when you look on the terminals, those are the ones where you literally pick and it literally says the bitcoin.com wallet. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. Because I think what they probably use is something like maybe like a deep link or like a payment link,
yes,
where potentially people can pay with any cryptocurrency. So I remember when I on Twitter, I think had some user had said, "Hey, look, this is a fake video. This is not really a Bitcoin Cash address." And it's like, no, that's actually a payment link. So it's slightly different, but it would be interesting to see, if it's possible to get that integration, that would be nice, because my preference is to use Selene. I didn't want to use the bitcoin.com wallet so much. Having said that, I do use both, and in fact I do use the whole gamut. So I do use Paytaka, I do use Electron Cash quite a lot, bitcoin.com, and of course Selene is my favorite. We settled our coffee bill using the Selene wallet. There's my shill there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was, if I remember right, Joel was talking to me about, I think the BSV guys might have been some of the ones who made, and that's why they made it with all those standards so that you could have every different currency, because they were kind of like, well, if we only support BSV, we're not going to have enough people involved. So they've made it more general. But I think I have a strong suspicion there might be the BIP70 one, and then also that separate other custom one. So we will need to talk to them about that at some point, because definitely, it's obvious, like, why wouldn't we do that integration? But that will just come down to talking to that team, and when we have the time and resources to do it. I don't know. Do you have some other questions about Selene?
I think that was it really, and just one thing that really did stick out to me was just the number of language packs. I mean, that have been just like 12 in the last week, and I know at the moment I'm assuming that we're targeting the more popular languages, just like, for example, say Hindi and Spanish, etc. And then of course we'll go to the other languages. And in fact, one language I'm quite keen to probably see is maybe Sinhalese, which is the primary language of Sri Lanka, because I think there's, in the Bitcoin Cash community, I think there are a couple of people from Sri Lanka who have recently sort of shown interest in Bitcoin Cash too. So maybe it might be nice to see that language pack come through. Through. And I think they use Sanskrit, so it's a slightly different dialogue text than the Latin languages, but that's easy to translate though.
No, we can definitely do that. So at the moment we've got 25 languages, I believe, and then we added these new 12, which they came from. So the first 25 we did was like the 20 most spoken languages in the world, I think, pretty much, except for maybe Arabic, plus then 2 or 3, I think I threw in Greek and Italian, maybe something like that. So we did the 25, and then after that, somebody, I think Marius, requested that we add the 12 ones that were most used in like where crypto was being adopted. Yes. And that's actually quite a different list in some respects to some of the ones that are just the major world languages, right? So we added all those ones, and in doing that, the reason we could roll it out so fast was because I've written a script that scans over our code base and finds all the text, and then it just translates it into every different language automatically, right?
Fantastic.
So if you have a suggested language, or if anybody does, then just let me know, and it's literally only 10 or 15 minutes that we can just auto translate the whole thing and add any new language. And of course, as we're building new features and stuff, that's how we'll be able to keep up to date with so many translations for so many different languages. It's not perfect. Some languages are better than others. Spanish and French seem to have been really good. English, obviously, I write that, so that's all just native. And then for the other stuff, some like of the smaller languages seem to be a bit more inaccurate. So there, if we can get user feedback, hey, tweak this, add this, we will do that, right? But the idea is that the auto translation, just uses Google Translate, is kind of good enough, right? So that people can understand, what it's about.
Brilliant, I think.
So that's, we should have more Sinhalese maybe coming soon. All right, the next thing we got to shill as well is the listener survey. So like I said on the last episode, it's just 13 questions. It's really quick. All you need to do is go to bitcoincashpodcast.com/survey, SURVEY. Last year we got 37 listener responses, and so far on this year we're up to about 28 or 29, I think. So if you can go and fill that out, if you're listening to the show, that would be brilliant, because it would be quite nice if we had year-on-year growth. It would be a bit disappointing if it was going backwards and we were having less results. But I have been watching those results come in, and I'm not going to say anything about them just yet, because otherwise we'd introduce bias into the sample. People thinking, they need to answer one way or another way. But it's very, very interesting to see the results coming in, and we will do a full breakdown of that on the next episode, going through every question and all what was said and comparing it to last year as well. So if you have 5 minutes, please just go and fill that out, bitcoincashpodcast.com/survey.
And if I could just second that as well and say, look, I'm really, really thankful to the Bitcoin Cash podcast guys are producing about 8 hours of content every single month. So please do spend 5 minutes of your day. These guys here spending more than 8 hours a month producing us top of the line content. So please do spend 5 minutes of your time. Just fill in that survey using the link down below, please. Thank you.
And then, yeah, I guess we'll see as well too, but I'm more interested in ways that we can, in the future, sort of definitely get more community feedback on different things, because especially with things like the chips, obviously this year, I was thinking, like the initial survey was more just sort of the demographics and then the cryptos that people have, and then also the trending topics. I like that you can get a bit of a sense of what's the community thinking about the latest narrative that everybody's talking about on Twitter or whatever. But this year, the innovation was thinking, wait a second, we can use this to get some insight into how people are feeling about the whole chip process, and maybe in the future we can have a way to do that on a more ongoing basis, live sentiment tracking or something. The concern I have is that at a certain point we would be vulnerable to like bots. Like right now, there's no registration or anything like that, obviously, because I just want to keep it, privacy preserving and so on. But at some point somebody could come in and just spam the results like full of nonsense to add too much noise into the sample. If they want to do, at the moment the show is small enough that that's not really a problem, but at some point it will be. So I don't know, what way we can do that. Maybe there's a peer-to-peer sort of way we can do it, maybe with cash tokens, where we mint a bunch of tokens and then hand them out to known people, and then they can hand them out to their friends, and we can sort of build a big enough sample size of people, in a way that is not wrecking everyone's privacy, but does actually guarantee we have a real set of people. I don't know, Jet, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, we were asked the last episode if we would ever do a podcast token, and I think this is the one case where it actually might make sense, where, if I don't know, the logistics of it, but if we could find a way that, either by viewing or sharing or somehow interacting with the podcast, they get this token, then they redeem that token to participate in the survey, then that's the verified human interaction, right? So
well, I mean, even then you could still find a way that's why we're going to have to be careful about how you could game, because there would still be maybe ways that people could game that, but we would just raise the bar to do so higher. And then also, if there's some,
it's one of these things where we can't really just use a Bitcoin wallet and digitally sign it. Yeah, so I think I like your idea, Jet, of that token idea. But at the same time, we just had to make sure that sort of all the bases are covered, really, isn't it? In terms of that, we can't have some sort of automated way of that
just spamming it up. Yeah, and then otherwise, we just lose the signal in the noise, and because obviously crypto is always going to be tradable, right? So the other thing I think is we make some of these podcast tokens, then suddenly somebody gets on tap swap and they're listing it up like, oh, here you go, here, 1 BCH, and you can buy in and you can get a vote on the tokens, but then that would be, so the issuance, kind of how do we do that exactly? And then
we make it a smart contract built in, so if there's any, like, if the token is not interacting back with the podcast, we get like a percentage of whatever the overall transaction is. But if it's interacting with the podcast, we'll pay the miner fee or something like that. Like, we'll have a small pot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure there's a way we can make it work.
One very quick thing, if we could, Jeremy and Jet, just before we go on to the next section, is I'd like to just give a quick shout out to the people who have signed on today and just say thank you for tuning in live. So would it be possible if I could just shout out their names, if that's okay?
Yeah. So we got Bitcoin Jason, we got Pantera, we got Duncanomics, we got Omar, we got Acid Sploit. I recognize all those contributors there. So hello, everyone. Thanks for being with us live. Ray's loving it.
I'm loving it, because I was kind of thinking, it's the Monday morning. And I was kind of thinking, I was not sure who will be tuning in today. So thank you so much for coming online today. Thank you.
Monday morning, and it's a holiday in Canada and the US. So
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
It's a good choice.
maybe everyone's down the beach or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it's good to have you here. Always, I like doing the show live as well too. That's the thing. A lot of these shows, they're pre-recorded podcasts and whatever. But I don't know. I just like things live. There's less. You can't fake it when it's live, right?
Yes, yeah, and it's one of these things. I had to see Jeremy in person. We just had to. So, and we weren't too far away, so it made sense. Yeah.
It's been great. All right, so we got the price. We got to check in on that. So this week, GBTC won their case against the SEC. The specifics on that, I'm a little unclear on. I think it probably wasn't as much of a resounding win as some people would have you believe, but it was good enough for the headlines, and that pumped the price. Although we've fallen off a bit the last day or two, but Bitcoin Cash is $193.76 US. One BTC buys 134 BCH, and one Ethereum is 8.4 BCH. So we're stable against USD, marginally up on the ratio against BTC, and stable also against ETH. So when it comes to the investing and price speculation of things, how do you treat the markets?
So at the moment, what I'm kind of thinking is, we've been in a ever so minor pullback from the 250 highs that we've had recently. From the investing side, it's great news to see that GBTC won, although they are a different chain. We're still in the crypto economy, so they're at this moment in time, their win is our win as well. One thing I'm having a close look at is what's happening in the US with the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC, and also to see what the Fed will announce with the summary of economic projections, because sometimes those activities can kind of set a tone as to what may happen in the investing landscape over the next 3 to 6 months. So I think the Fed have been a little bit reluctant to sort of give their recent summary of economic projections. And I think they've sort of been holding back a little bit. But of course, in the alternative media, we've been hearing various stories of small banks collapsing and all these other things. But at the same time, I think it's important just to keep a pulse and just see what the Fed is saying, though, because that can, of course, affect the markets. So we're just sort of seeing what's happening. But I think I really can't see the price going down that much. I'm definitely long at this moment in time. I know, of course, there will be another financial crisis that's sort of brewing in the background, but I think for the moment we're definitely long. So Long BCH, yeah. Not financial advice.
Yeah, exactly. You got to say that. Always got to say that. Simply just personal opinions and views being shared here. Right. So that's when it comes down to the speculating. So tell us about traveling on BCH. Obviously, recently you've been doing a series on your channel where you were following your journey, paying things with Bitcoin Cash and so on and so forth. And that came to this big trip around parts of Europe. So in your own words, break it down for us. How did that idea come about, and how did it end up?
Sure. So what had happened was there's two sort of motivations for this. So the first one was, and we've all seen the videos of Roger Intus scanning the going into the supermarket and buying a whole bunch of stuff, all paid for with Bitcoin Cash. And then what had happened was, I think it was over Christmas, there was another post by Jonathan Silverblood, who had shared also his experience as well. He went to Slovenia and had mentioned that he managed to do most purchases in crypto, and I think there was some within fiat. So I kind of thought, since I had now left my previous employer and I had all this free time, I thought, I've got to book a trip to Ljubljana. I'll take Adele with me because she's on summer break too. So we just decided to head over to Ljubljana. And one of the things we'd basically found was it really is possible to have a holiday in most places in the world and almost completely pay for it with Bitcoin Cash. Now, I'll give an example where when I went to Ljubljana, I pre-planned everything, absolutely everything. Apart from where I'd go to the toilet, I'd literally pre-planned absolutely everything. So we'd planned the flights were going to be done by Travala, the hotels. And then what I found was, hang on a second, within the Travala website itself, there's this activities section, and we can book hotels from there. It was possible also to get a gift card, so you can get a Ljubljana tourist card, and that could be paid for with Bitcoin Cash. And when we bought the tourist card itself, that allowed us to travel anywhere in the country. You can use most of the buses and with the tourist card. And not only that, but you can actually pay for tourist attractions. So we went to the House of Illusions, and maybe some of you on there may have seen the video that I put of myself sort of levitating on these pins. And that, the House of Illusions was paid for with Bitcoin Cash. We even had a electric train tour around the whole city centre, and that was covered by the tourist card too. So all these experiences were paid. So the only bits we had to fill in was, where would we eat? So half the time we decided, okay, we'll eat in the hotel in the evening. So Dell and I, for 2 evenings, we stayed there for four days. 2 evenings we thought we'd eat in the hotels. 2 evenings we thought we'd eat outside. And one of the ways we got around, actually, I spoke to merchants, and the way I'd do that was I'd contact them both on the Bitcoin Maps and the Go Crypto app. So the Go Crypto app I did find was a little bit more reliable, because they, of course, would be incentivized as they're advertising the Go Crypto product to keep those sort of maps and listings up to date. And what we had found was, when we used the Go Crypto app, and I'm not shilling this at all.
if they helped out, yeah, sure.
What had happened was, it was very, very accurate. So if I wanted to, I could, within the Go Crypto app, just type in pizza or pizza restaurants. It would find a list of pizza restaurants. On this slide that we're seeing now, it was a fairly hot day. Adele wanted our ice cream. I just typed in ice cream, and we went to Cacao and managed to purchase some ice creams. Again, all paid for with Bitcoin Cash. And the nice thing is, in Slovenia, what we had seen was a lot of these merchants do have a very nice terminal, and it looks just like an Apple device. So the merchants are incentivized to have it because it gives all these different payment options. Of course, fiat is at the top, which is currently the default medium for exchange. That's going to change in the future. And then we had all these other payment methods. And on the terminal itself, once the terminal's powered on, you could actually see the Go Crypto option and the Bitcoin.com wallet. And people could just click on the Bitcoin.com wallet, pay with Bitcoin Cash, and it works seamlessly. So one thing we had found was, there was quite a lot of merchants and businesses that did not accept Bitcoin Cash that frequently, and a lot of the merchants that we had used it may have been their first time. So if you are going on a crypto holiday and you're aware that the merchant is using a Go Crypto device, all you need to do is just tell them, can I just see the terminal? And all they would need to do is just make sure it's powered on. It's got either it's been fully charged or got a charging cable plugged into it, and it's powered on. And then people will be able to just you just press the Bitcoin.com wallet option, and you can just pay with Bitcoin Cash, and it works seamlessly. So it really is possible to actually have a full holiday all paid for with Bitcoin Cash. One thing I would share, though, and the secret to having a successful crypto holidays, you have to really do plan everything. That also does include the travel as well. So it would be, for example, travel to and from the airport. And then you can decide how much internal travel you want to do within the country that you want to visit. What you're probably likely to find is that the service providers, so it will be things like taxi companies and so on, may not necessarily be accepting Bitcoin Cash, but that's going to change in the future. So we're just seeing a blossoming all around the world now. And in fact, I see Bitcoin Jason on the podcast too, and I really would love to spend some time with you as well. So just to learn from you and see how you're doing things in Australia as well. So I'd really like to see that.
Yeah, when we were in St. Kitts, it was super interesting because it was sort of a slightly different approach that everything had in that way. Like you said, okay, they got the Go Crypto app with the merchants in St. Kitts. We didn't really do it like that at all. That obviously it can work, but the way there, it was just kind of like I just walked around and I just found places like, hey, do you accept Bitcoin Cash? They would have the sticker and we would just go in there. But that's only possible in a place where you had such a strong onboarding push and you had a bit of local network effect going on, right? I think probably in the broader scheme of things, we're more likely to see more countries, more like Slovenia there, where they have those integrations. And I know one of the problems in Townsville or in other places that they have is that the staff, like you said, they're not familiar with it because it doesn't get paid with as much and so forth. So if there's a separate device, it gets uncharged or it gets lost or forgotten or put away, or only the manager knows where it is or what the passcode is, or there's 1,000 other problems. So that integration with the same thing that they use for fiat ensures that it's going to be on, it's going to be ready to go. It's the same thing they could use with a credit card, right?
Yes, that's right. Because when we went to that supermarket, it was literally that integration was just built into the backend and it was just sitting there. And when I had spoken to the shop owner, they said, I think the last Bitcoin or any crypto transaction was probably about 3 to 6 months prior to my purchase. So there are some advantages of having these integrations, particularly at this moment in time, while there's still fiat around. But of course, that is going to be changing, hopefully, in the not too distant future.
Yeah, that's super interesting. This idea that, yeah, merchants are going to drop off if there's any additional hassle, right? Like they wouldn't have kept it there for 3 to 6 months with no customers unless there was zero that they had to worry about it or do about it. If it was giving them any grief, any one customer complaining, anything like that, suddenly they're just going to be like, this is not worth it, right?
Yes. And this is also how potentially we can do enormous onboarding. So one thing I'd like to see, and in fact I was going to make another Bitcoin Cash video about this later, is it's so easy to target very large supermarket chains. So like in the UK we have a large supermarket chain called Asda. In the US it's called Walmart, and I think Walmart actually do own Asda. And again, they're using green. So from a marketing and branding perspective, it would be just so elegant to have that Bitcoin Cash option, and it's just built into the Asda payment terminal. So people, when they use the self-service checkout, they'll be able to pay with it with Bitcoin Cash. And we could do a similar thing, even like with BP petrol. Again, they use the green logo, so we have that incentive to market their product. Or if we want to use the Go Crypto thing, we've got Shell, which is again similar colors. You've got that orange sort of shell icon. So there's plenty of sort of potential larger merchants we can target using payment processors. Now, the big advantage for this is it puts crypto right under the nose of every customer using it, because they're going to see that option, that Go Crypto thing. And as we get more market dominance, potentially BCH can come into the fold. So potentially you could maybe see from a branding side, we could see the Go Crypto thing. Maybe in smaller cases underneath, we could see pay with Bitcoin Cash or something like that. A bit like how when Hotmail came around first, we saw this message has been sent using Hotmail. And if you probably remember those sort of quotes at the end of the footer of every Hotmail message, we could have similar sort of integrations and sort of solutions like that. So the world really is our oyster. I mean, we're so early on. It's brilliant.
It's funny because the community obviously needs to figure out different strategies for attacking different kinds of merchants, because when you come to these large providers like that, getting to the decision maker, the person who's going to sign it off and say it's okay and so forth, so is much harder to do. And you do need usually some kind of connect in there or some kind of way of doing it. And also they're going to obviously be very big on the regulation side and accounting side and the legal risk, what about that, and blah 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 blah. So there's like loads of stuff that you've got to do there, whereas with a small merchant, it's kind of flipped around. It's much easier to find the person who's involved, to talk to them, to get them to personally, believe in things or agree with what's, the mission here, and to have them go out of their way a little bit for it, or have it be a bit inconvenient, but also to teach them on an individual level. But they're not going to need like a giant API integration that's run by a whole software team, or 24/7 support line necessarily. So there's pros and cons to both kinds of onboarding, and obviously we need to be able to hit the full spectrum of merchants, right?
Absolutely, and I'm of course a big proponent for also paying for peer-to-peer, because of course the advantages of that is no one can stop us really. As soon as we got, say, for example, the Bitcoin Cash register app and then a receiving wallet, paying fully peer-to-peer, and that's what we want to see sort of around the world. It will happen, but I think it's going to happen in time, and it's good we have both options sort of side by side as we grow this new economy.
Yeah, it's quite important, and I think with that, like you were saying, with that peer-to-peer thing, that was another thing that was very obvious in St. Kitts was if you can have a local concentration of adopters and BCH users who are familiar with it, then it almost becomes like a little separate economy in and of itself. Because like you said, we would go to somewhere where maybe they didn't accept BCH. Some of the places did accept BCH. Some of the places where they didn't, one person pays in fiat and then everyone pays back the person who settled the bill, and there you've got like 6 people paying in BCH. It's like a little instant, peer-to-peer exchange, right, that you've got going on there. And since that deal is just all being done between people in the BCH community, it's irrelevant. Like you've solved so many problems right there in terms of, nobody's stressed about what's the exchange rate or what's the paperwork involved, right? There's no onboarding and explaining to 1,000 people. You're just building a net. Like the network effect has to start among the people who are most invested. We often think about the network effect in terms of growing it to outside people and that adding, but really the best connections that you can make are the ones within the network graph of the people who are already there. And then that creates a little thriving economy and a lot of transactions. And then other people are, drawn into it because they can already see there's a lot going on, right? It's like Paul Stortz and his whole party analogies, right? You don't want to be sticking your head out the door always saying, come to our party, it's going to be great. No, you want to have the people inside the party having a great time, and then word just somehow
spreads around.
Just mystically gets out. Like, have you heard about this great party? That's the exact same way that the economy works. When a country is doing well, when a state or a city or even an individual business is doing well, word just gets around like, oh man, this is, people want to be part of it.
Just like osmosis, isn't it? And also the nice thing is because it's Bitcoin Cash, because it's on-chain, it's verifiable, it is a doddle for the accounts. Everything's timestamped. We have the amount that's paid. So every transaction, we know the timestamp, the amount of Bitcoin Cash that's traded, and currently at the moment, the amount of fiat that is equivalent for. So it makes accounting easy. Whereas these other blockchain solutions, they don't give that level of visibility. So this is the nice thing with Bitcoin Cash, and really we've got a good shot of bringing this to the whole world.
Yeah. So any other final sort of reflections on your trip?
So I visited. I think one thing I would definitely say though is do treat yourself to a crypto holiday. I know everyone who's tuning into the podcast is working hard behind the scenes, either listening to, creating content, promoting, working on the engineering side. Treat yourself to a crypto holiday. You definitely do deserve it. If you wanted to visit Ljubljana, I would definitely recommend it. You can have a full holiday. Again, it depends on your preferences, what you want to do. When Adele and I went, we wanted to have a bit of a city break. So we kind of thought, okay, we'll explore the city. But if you want to visit Slovenia, there's a beautiful place, and you want to do more of a nature visit, there's a beautiful place called Lake Bled, which is about 50 miles north of Ljubljana. And it's one of these things, you've got beautiful mountains sort of surrounding this lake, and there's this castle right in the middle of the lake. Looks so serene, so peaceful. It's absolutely wonderful. I would highly, highly recommend going to Slovenia. And there's many, many places around the world. Like we've got Townsville in Australia, which I definitely do want to visit. We've got St. Kitts as well, which is accepting it everywhere. Got St. Martin. There's places are blossoming all around the world now.
Yeah. Florida, I do mean to get over there at some point and find out how they're doing, because there seems to, there's a bit of a community going on. There's a few independent efforts and things are sort of progressing. Ryan. Yes. Good job, Ryan, who's having his golf tournament shout out on the 9th of October, I believe. So anybody who's in the States or in the local area, wants to check that out, definitely look that up. Ryan Giffen's channel, 9th of October, and you can find all that stuff, or have a hit of golf, because I'm definitely keen to hear how that was from the community's point of view. All right, we've got a few other topics, obviously, we got to hit on to, and you specifically requested that we got a chance to chat about the block size algorithm adjusting and the chip that Bitcoin Cash Audist has come up with. So I have asked him for an update on how it's going, and he told me that right now the Bitcoin Cash node implementation is underway, because he was advised by Jason Dreisner, who did the Cash Tokens chip, that if obviously you need to get the idea out there, you need to discuss with people, you need to have them on board, you need to be pushing things in the right direction. And then once you're sort of at that point that everybody's feeling good about it, you've answered criticism, then you need to get it an implementation, because then it makes it more concrete in people's minds, right? So the plan is that's kind of in the works. It's obviously now early September, so the deadline of November 15th in terms of the lock-in is coming up, but the plan is to get that going, and then from there push out and get a lot of statements supporting behind the scenes. He's already built obviously quite a lot of support. I've done a statement, but a lot of other people haven't, but they're sort of on board with it. And the plan is then to lock it in November. So I'm not really aware of anybody with a big disagreement or issue with it, but did you have some thoughts?
It was interesting, because this is something I wanted to sort of discuss, really, and I had a look at the whole proposal, and yep, it does look solid. So just in case anyone has not read it, the purpose of this is basically to adopt a dynamic block size, which will give more flexibility, more elasticity for future demands, while at the same time reducing the overhead. So instead of, for example, going from 32 megabyte blocks to 256 megabyte blocks, and then having to update the metadata, and there's a whole bunch of other administrative work that has to happen in the background, or maintenance work that needs to happen in the background, it sort of makes this a bit more dynamic, a bit more fluid. And I think the proposal is technically sound too. So we have a absolute floor of 32 megabytes, but the elasticity, I think at the moment, goes up to about 2 gigabytes, isn't it? So because we're supporting 32-bit architecture at the moment, but potentially in the future that may change as we go to 64.
As far as I know, there's no actual limit. It can just go, there is a limit in terms of the amount that it can grow per unit of time, right? Because I think BCH orders, he designed it so that I think it was could it go to a maximum of 4x per year, I think was the original proposal. And then that was then brought down so that it could only max out at 2x per year. And there was a couple of reasons for that, but one was that it then fits under the BIP 101, which was the original scaling proposal that Gavin Andreessen said when all the block size was starting, and all that was kind of everybody said, okay, this is roughly the trajectory of hardware. This is kind of, would be a nice big exponential curve, right? But to hit that maximum, it would need to be that we were using a lot of capacity, right? It would need to be full blocks pretty regularly. If it's less than that, if half the miners are only mining half that or something, then it won't, escalate up to that amount so quickly. So as far as I know, I don't remember there being anything about, there is no cap, it could just keep escalating forever, but it will only keep going up so long as the transaction demand justifies it, right?
Yeah, yes, that's right. And I think it also another nice thing with this proposal is it does also cater for the free market. Now, as we all know, the free market can be quite chaotic. There can be some bursts of demand, or sometimes things can be a little bit quieter, and having that elasticity and that block size is a perfect solution. So I know the general consensus is, okay, well, let's have a great big enough pipe that can support everything, enormous throughput, but having that elasticity, even on the base layer, I think that is definitely the way to go. Yeah,
it makes sense to me. And I think probably the bigger, like you said, there is definitely some maintenance burden in terms of if you have a fixed limit, then you have to update the node software, and you have to push out the new updates and so forth. That's part of it, definitely. But to me, the bigger burden that we're relieving is the social burden, right? Of like you said, everybody getting together like every year. And then somebody says, well, we're going to go from 32 to 128. And then somebody else says, well, why don't we go to 256? And somebody else says, no, my node can't handle it. And then, and it just turns into this huge circus. And the amount of time and effort and energy that we have as a community is obviously a limited pool, right? So we need to be efficient in terms of the problems that we're attacking, right? We can't attack every problem, and we also can't put our full focus on only so many things at once. So especially like something like that, which requires the entire community to buy in, it's very, very expensive from a communication overhead point of view, right? Is if everybody is discussing that, like we can even see it right now in BTC where they're having this drive chains drama, and then they also have the CTV that some people want to do, and that's just now just dominate. Are they thinking about adopting merchants? No. Are they thinking about adding tokens? No. Are they thinking about the next great technology frontier? Are they thinking about making better podcasts? Are they thinking about putting on a cool conference? No, they're not thinking about any of that, because they're just going in circles with this disagreement, which is very hard to find in a large group of unspecified people, right? So I'd say, here we go. Emergent Reasons is saying that's right. There's no cap. The requirement for slow change is important. It ensures that businesses can have predictable resource requirements. Yes. So the idea is it can grow, but also there's a long enough sort of lead time, like you said, that it's not going to escalate more than double. I think it's in a year at the very, very most. But obviously, if that was happening, if the economy was growing that fast, the resources of every single company in the scene would be exploding. So there would certainly be the time and resources and capital available to add that scaling. But it also can't get so out of control that we're just, businesses are caught off guard and suddenly nodes are going up, because that's also a disaster, right? If we're known for being fast, cheap, and reliable, we have to uphold that reliability. You just can't have, like you said, those big providers at supermarkets or whatever, if they go down even for just one day and everybody's wanting to use it, you're screwed. The disaster is massive, right?
Yeah, that's right. It always has to be on, and we have to have that high availability there, all the time. And yes.
One of the things that I think has been really good about this process, though, is that the chip process, it really does seem to be working. I don't know what you think, but like I said, I don't know of anyone with any major disagreements. There was some questions, like Jonathan Tumim said, okay, the schedule is a bit aggressive, and then BCH orders, adjusted that down. There were some people who were more or less sure about having a floating block size limit to begin with. That's all been discussed. It's all been worked out. And like I said on the show, I considered having somebody on to have a debate, the pro and against, but there really isn't anybody making a strong, certainly not a vocal case against that I'm aware of.
And this is something I've seen as well. Looking into the background of the communications, I think everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. We want the same thing. We're really, really passionate. We want to see peer-to-peer cash work and be scalable, and actually scalable in a safe, secure way. And I mean, hats off to Emergent Reasons. I think we had we would have had another, was it a Zoom call? Or I had asked a few questions it was probably a Twitter stream, and there's a lot of QA and work sort of going on behind the scenes. So these solutions are being very tested under very, very high load. And we know, and we are seeing that reliability there. So just want to say as well, thank you, sir. No, there's a lot of work that's going in from also the QA and the stability side of that, just to make sure that the chain is stable and secure, and each transaction works. We've had, so far, touch wood, a success rate of 100%. So that's fantastic. Well done, guys.
Yeah, and it's one thing as well to make note of, right, is that there's a certain level of execution that is baked into the community as a result of doing this. And I think it's really important everybody's aware of that, right? So in any tech company or in any organization really of any kind, but obviously the tech company is kind of the relevant example here. If your team gets out of practice at shipping updates, they get lazy, things get missed. Somebody new joins the team and they haven't done a big rollout before, right? Like nobody knows what happens if the test scripts break or yada, 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 yada. And that's why it's really important that BCH, like we have a regular upgrade schedule. People are sticking to it. There's a known process. Even for a big update, everybody gets on the same page. Things get tested, they get done, and they get rolled out. Like with cash tokens, right? There was no drama. It all just went great. Everybody celebrated, and it was brilliant. But there are always going to be, problems and bumps along the way. But that gets magnified massively if you don't have an expectation of continuously shipping. As soon as you stop, then the momentum starts to die and inaccuracy starts to creep in. So yet again, it's just the B2C community. Not only are they having an argument over what update to have, even if they were going to have an update, the exact process of how to do it and how it rolls out and stuff like that is just going to be a disaster. So I've been so happy to see the community really, getting on board and buying into this process and doing things visibly and well ahead of time. It's been amazing.
Well done, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, big thank you to everyone involved in that. Okay, so we've got after last week, I was saying like, it seems like not much has been going on in the community recently, and predictably the week after that, it seems like it started popping off again. So we've got this new Cash Ninjas project, which is minting on the 1st of October. So mark that in your diaries, from Matthew Hurkins along with Itachu and Josh Ellithorpe, making a new NFT project where they're going to not only release some new Cash Ninjas NFTs. The artwork looks absolutely incredible. By the way, you can go on ninjas.cash and have a look at it. It's very high quality stuff. I was super impressed by the artwork and the branding. But they're also going to port the Reapers over. So they've done the Reapers project previously on Smart BCH, and that's been cooking along this whole time, even with the disaster. So they're going to let people import their Reapers from SBCH onto Cash tokens, helping to sort of reunite the community and obviously bring more traction and attention to this. And on top of that, they're also building out all the tooling that they need for this NFT project, right? They need a way to release the NFTs and to mint them and all that. There's a lot of software and related stuff in the background for that. So they're building all of that for their own project, and they're also going to open source it to the community. And this is huge because it means that when, in 3 months or in 6 months, undoubtedly the next time BCH gets hyped, there's going to be tons of people coming in saying, hey, I want to do an NFT project. How do I do that? And if all the tools and resources are available for them to get started, they will just be integrated into the community so much faster. So this is just an amazing project to see, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fascinated by this because this now, we've had Cash tokens launch in the middle of May, and just within 3 months, we've seen Reapers come along, BCH Guru, now we've got Cash Ninja. So we're seeing this huge blossoming, and 3 months is not a very long time. We have to code it, we have to go through the peer review, check it works, do the bridging integrations. So there's a lot of really good work going on here, and just sort of like to discuss this particular project a little bit more. And I think there's they want to basically mint 5,000 tokens, and I think each token will probably cost, I think it's about 5 million Satoshis. So it's a total sort of fundraise of about 250 BCH. And it's quite exciting because this is almost like a collector card series where each ninja you can have potentially, I think there's 8 different separate clans. And you get these special ones where you get these renegade clans. My birthday is around the middle of October, so I want to have a renegade ninja. So I think I will be buying one of these ninjas for sure. Yeah, in fact, I'll probably be buying quite a few of them because I want a renegade one. And it totally vibes with us as well, isn't it? The whole the BCH community. We want those renegade ninjas. Get your ninjas when they're released. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking up their site. So they've got a whole roadmap as well. They've published the transparency is really good here. So August 2023, go public. So they've done that. October 1st is when the mint starts. Then they're going to bridge over the Reapers. Then they're going to add a showcase collection page, I guess similar to what the BCH gurus have, which has been awesome. Then they've got here, they're going to do a digital comic book. So they're going to integrate, I guess, their characters into a whole artwork series and everything, but only downloadable for holders of Cash Ninjas. So there you go. I guess you're getting some extra value then out of being part of the project. And then they've got airdrops and collaborations with other cash tokens, NFT projects, and so forth, right? So we'll see about that. But that's also an area that I think we're seeing the community really start to pick up in, is because as you have more active projects in the scene, it's that same network effect that we talk about that only applies, between projects as well as between individuals. So recently we had the Slime Shadies and BCH Guru did their AMA weekend where we played some Slime Shadies as well and talked to both of those teams, and that was really cool. That came about as a result of not just one of those teams, but both of them getting together and saying, okay, let's do this and commingle our communities, cross promote, all that kind of stuff, right? And probably we'll see that with Cash Ninjas, and we'll see that obviously Selene will be doing that at some point. We'll try and add some of this tech for these things and find ways to cross promote, and everything can grow together, right? That's the whole point of an economy.
That's right, yes. And potentially, I mean, even from an investment point of view, these tokens are the first of their kind. So as we're seeing cash tokens grow and we're seeing many, many more projects come along, potentially in the future. Now, this is, again, not financial advice. Like, for example, I had one of those Emerald DAO ones, the very first ones, and I'm thinking now, I might not sell that. It's 10 million sats. It's a lot of sats, but I'm tempted to keep it because who knows? That might be like potentially holding a Picasso or something. If cash tokens becomes a major part of the NFT infrastructure in the future, and eventually takes on other parts where Ethereum's currently developing, these can be very, very valuable. So I'm tempted to hold on to my Emerald DAO. Again, not financial advice.
Well, I do know. And we have seen, you might say, well, is that hopium or not? But we have seen people have already sold those Emerald DAO tokens on TapSwap at above the rate of the actual amount of sats in the token, right? So somebody has already got some kind of collector premium. I think I even saw one was actually sold. It was like for 2 BCH or something like that. Maybe it was one of the first one or something like that. But people are, people, that kind of thing does happen, right? When people come along to the community, they find what's going on here, they buy into the history, or they get excited about the project, or they, and as more wallets integrated and so forth, then it's just going to, snowball from there, I hope.
Yeah.
Now we've got not only the Cash Ninjas, but also, and I've been very, very glad to see that the hugely bullish sign, I would say, for the community, is Cake Wallet announced that they were going to be, I guess that they're going to be doing Bitcoin Cash integration. They put up some screenshots and they teased a beta version of their software that has BCH. Now, they're a very popular Litecoin and Monero wallet. I've definitely heard both of those communities hyping up this wallet and saying, oh, it's easy and blah, blah, blah. I personally, especially with the Litecoin community, I think it's quite funny because they don't have Selene and Paytaka and Zapit and the big, they don't have Flowy, like they don't have dedicated wallets in the Cash and Eyes, Electron Cash. They don't have their own ecosystem of infrastructure of all these dedicated projects just for their coin, or maybe they do, but those wallets apparently are less good than just generic multi-coin wallets, right? They're reliant on those service providers. And so those wallets are now seeing, wait, Bitcoin Cash is kicking off. I need to be a part of it. That shows that we're really sort of making ripples, and teams are starting to wake up. Like we can't miss this train. There's more and more demand, and things are moving in the right direction. And you don't get multi-coin projects joining up to things that have contention and division and strife. It's only when things are going well, when crypto's in a bit of a summer, that those projects come in. So not only do you have them, Cake Wallet, but Stack Wallet with Diego, who we had on the show recently, they've apparently been talking about doing a cash tokens integration. Now, this is not only bullish just for them being involved in the first place, but if their cash tokens is BCH only, right? So this is not like, oh, well, we're going to add send and receive BCH because we have send and receive this currency and that currency and that currency. If they're taking the time to look into the Bitcoin Cash tech specifically and say, this is something that we're prepared to bet our time and resources on integrating and adding. Either there's user demand or we expect that there's going to be user demand. Then that's just like the BCH community growing without any effort from the quote unquote Bitcoin Cash community. We don't have to spend any time and effort on that, but now people are coming to integrate with us. So I'm just absolutely blown away and thrilled to see that happening.
And I think it's just a testament to just how well Bitcoin Cash works, you see, because the product works, so it almost markets itself, really. And now we're seeing all these other wallet providers and vendors creating solutions because the fundamentals work. The product works so well. It's starting to almost advertise itself.
Well, that's what an open community is as well, too. And that's something where we can really benefit, obviously. If we're doing a good job and the stuff is open source, you never know who's looking at what we've got going on, right? The specs are out there, a lot of the code, the libraries. Obviously, we can do stuff to make it visible, which the podcast tries to do a lot of, but it's just an open invitation to the world. And so you never know who's going to keep an eye on it. And the other thing I think that's also important to remember is that everything that's out in the public now is sort of lagging behind the what's coming, right? Things take time. Things take 3 to 6 months or a year or whatever to be developed, like this Cash Ninjas project, right? Or these upcoming integrations. They're not just going to pop out overnight. That takes a few months of ramp up time. So whatever we hear about at any one point is what people were already thinking about 3 to 6 months ago. They were cooking that up in the background. So it's really nice to see things constantly starting to come out, and the speed of the community growth and the integrations and all that is only likely to ramp up, right? So it's been a big year so far in 2023 for BCH. And I think that's definitely paying off. I've got here a tweet. I'm going to have to really lean in to read it, but it's from this guy, Luke Martin. He said, at VentureCoinist on Twitter, he said, interesting scenario to watch for. BCH's best performing top 20 coin this week. When BCH started to outperform a few months ago, we saw a Bitcoin pump from 26K to 31K, major alts gain 10 to 15%. Now, obviously, you can't expect the same move to repeat, but ... it is worth paying closer attention whenever an anomaly like Bcash strength keeps showing up, end quote. So now this is important because this guy has 325,000 followers on Twitter. So he's a huge part of the sort of general crypto. Like, I'd never even heard of this guy, right? I haven't paid any much attention to any of this. And historically, all these people ignore BCH. They're pumping Selene or Avalanche or whatever is coin of the week. But then once they start to hype it up, then it spreads around them. So we had Crypto Calio, who has 596K followers, was then also making tweets about it, who I've mentioned before on the show, right? So then people all really start to come in.
Yes, and this is where we see, of course, the price does get the initial interest, even if it's something like a pump. So say, for example, we've moved from we got actually a pump, and now we're sort of 90% over what Bitcoin Cash originally was. That's got the attention. And also what we have seen with the transactions, and particularly on the BTC side, is there are transactions failing on occasion. We've got all kinds of issues with Lightning, and then they're then questioning it and saying, hang on a second, Bitcoin Cash is working wonderfully. It's just doing what it says on the tin. BTC is having all these issues. People are having trouble getting their money out. We had that recently, that tweet where someone had $2,000, which they couldn't get off a Lightning wallet. And there's lots of stories like that. So what's basically happening now is the public are waking up. They can't hide that there are huge fundamental issues with the BTC chain, and it's going to come to a crux. I think potentially, from a speculation point of view, we could see that $250,000 price point, but then after that, I think things are going to come to a grinding halt, because all those UTXOs, they have to be written back to the main chain. And then this is where potentially we can see Bitcoin Cash really shine. So I think once we start to see prices increase, and I think when they potentially go over $1,000, I mean, we really will have we'll be really running then potentially, because we're then taking potentially market share from BTC and other chains, because people are going to need that fast peer-to-peer electronic cash, and it's really getting that attention now.
Yeah, you had people kind of saying this week on Twitter, like if you look into it, really, all these sort of narratives and so on and so forth, they're all just falling apart one by one. Like if you just rewind back even 2 or 3 years, the BTC people, well, just use Lightning. Well, that's kind of fallen apart, not only within the BCH space, who knew that from the beginning, but with everybody else as well, too. That's kind of become the thing. Like you have, the Taproot wizards, they're kind of anti-Lightning as well, right? So they've spread it around everywhere. And the ETH people, they're sort of like, Lightning's a bit of a joke. Like, you guys have a shitty layer 2 and we have all these other great layer 2. So that's now spread about, it just spreads everywhere. Like once the lie cracks, then it just goes everywhere, right? And then you have the same with, it's going to be store of value, that's going to be the next greatest thing. But now the BTC, it's been a long time since it has pumped, and even if it does a little bit in the next, it's probably only going to be a little bit. It's not going to be like this huge world changing thing, because there isn't the real world demand and momentum to back it up, right?
Yeah.
And so BCH now has been moving up a bit in the ranks. It's pumped in the price, and so as much as you can say, zoom out, but nobody cares. Like whatever happened 5 years ago, really, if you bought in the last 12 months, it doesn't matter to you. And certainly if you're looking to buy for the next 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, the previous price is irrelevant, right?
And as Bitcoin Cash gets used as that medium of exchange, just general in commerce, that's going to grow our market share. And as the market share grows, we're going to be then less susceptible to things like market manipulation. So you have, shall we say, larger influencers, whales, or whoever really trying to manipulate the price to their advantage. It's going to be less susceptible to that as it sort of gains market share and goes into many billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, and then eventually trillions. It's going to happen. So.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad to see the progress we're making on that front. Jet?
Yeah, so have either of you seen any of this shit happening at Burning Man?
Oh, yeah. So I've followed this a little bit, which is that they've now had the huge rains at Burning Man, which they never usually have. So now all of these people are stuck there in Fire Festival 2.0 with overflowing portaloos and stuff, right?
Yeah. So Burning Man this year reminds me of BTC in 2017, where everyone's excited. We all show up. We're like, we're going to change the world. They get rained out, which is essentially you got too popular too quick.
Does that never happen though? That's what I didn't understand. Has this never happened before at Burning Man? I mean, it is in the desert or whatever, but.
So I don't think it's ever happened at Burning Man, but Woodstock got flooded out way back when. But the difference is that the lake bed in Burning Man is, I think, acrid or something or it's alkaline or something like that. So if your bare skin touches it after the water's hit it, you'll get chemical burns. So yeah, all these people that are walking around barefoot are in for some real hard times coming up soon. And it's supposed to be you're supposed to have a plastic bag, then your socks, then another plastic bag in your boot covered with another plastic bag.
Holy cow. All right. Wow.
But it got,
that was.
Yeah. So it got so washed out and so many people were trying to leave that the government had to come in and close down the roads. Because if people kept trying to escape while it was so wet, it'd destroy the roads forever. Everyone would get stuck there. And then there's one clip of Chris Rock and a couple other people leaving on a Jeep early. And I feel like that was BCH in 2017. We were shit's going too weird. We're getting out of here.
They saw it coming.
And now everyone's stuck in this flooded shithole. And it's it makes sense. Tech bros, the same kind of demographic as well.
Well, that's I don't really know, all that much about Burning Man, but I always found it kind of funny because on one hand, I understand that it started as this sort of hippie alternative, I don't know, type of vibe, but like everything, it becomes pop, just like Bitcoin. Exactly. It starts out as fringe and cool and actually a bit unique and different, but then at some point it kind of gets watered down by the mainstream, because it's like we were saying before, once people hear about a cool party, then they all show up, and then that makes it a less cool party, right? So that kind of happened to Burning Man. And now I don't know, because I've never been, or I would like to go. Obviously, I would plan ahead in terms of rain now that I've seen this, but that then people are kind of saying, well, there's like the counter circle jerk, right? Of people who are like, oh, serves them right. All these pretentious people at Burning Man getting wrecked. And I'm like, kind of like, well, if you weren't there, why are you just laughing at their misery? Like, it sucks for them. I don't understand why you got a big hate boner against Burning. Like, it's weird, because it starts out with like Burning Man is cool, but it's a bit underground. But then some people are like, that's pretentious and I don't care about that. And then it becomes popular, and then it becomes the opposite. It's cool to hate on it instead of cool to be there. So, I think everybody's celebrating the whole get wrecked at Burning Man. I don't really vibe with that, but I don't know. Have you been to Burning Man, or you know anything about it?
I haven't, but I've got quite a few mates who've also been to Burning Man, and yeah, they've shared some similar stories. But totally can relate. I mean, to the whole scene at the moment, where swap your UTXOs while you got the chance.
Yeah, you don't want to be the last one left with the alkaline sludge getting into your boots and just wrecking you.
Well, to me, it's like that last episode where we mentioned you'd have to talk to the bank, which ends up being Fedimint, right? The government's come in and shut down the roads. CBDCs are coming to BTC. Lightning's not working. Switch your UTXOs now before you get locked in.
Yeah.
Bad financial.
Good ratio too, isn't it? 138. So that's
134. It's dropping.
134.
It's dropping. It's dropping all the time. It bits and starts. But yeah, that's right. Exactly. Like once the panic starts, it's kind of too late. And well, it is, honestly. And I'm saying this now in advance of it all happening. Whenever it does, if it's 6 months or 5 years or 10 years, I don't know. But it will go down in history as one of the greatest, like, overnight wealth destruction, like rug pulls ever. Like, if we saw a flippening happening BTC to BCH, let's say maybe it starts in earnest at like 50 to 1 or something like that, and it just takes, I don't know, 3 weeks or something as the BTC chain clogs up and the fees go high. Like, all the people with all their money in BTC, it's going to go to zero. There's going to be so many people with that, like we've seen with Hex recently, that's like kind of blown up and they've rugged that, and everybody's resharing these clips of, oh, look at this idiot who put his 20 grand in and that was his life savings and now it's all gone. Like, can you imagine the amount of laser eye BTC people, institutions, like everybody is going to get wrecked. It's going to be an absolute
It'll be like
disaster.
.com 2.0, literally.
Yes.
Because what we're seeing, even like with BTC, it's just like what you remember that project OneCoin, and then in fact back in the days, OneCoin had a higher market cap than BTC. So
did it? Okay.
I think it had to sort of show the full list, and I think they actually did show OneCoin as having a slightly higher market cap than BTC. But I think OneCoin's problem was, of course, liquidity, and what basically happened was, OneCoin's just not there anymore. We're going to exactly see same thing with BTC again, probably not too distant future.
Yeah, and like you're saying, once it gets started, it's too late. So at the very least, all these BTC people, they just need to get like even just a little, just hedge your bets. Just don't be so sure. But of course, most of them are that sure, and they're gonna have to learn their own way, their own time. But there's going to be a lot of crying once all that is done. That's for sure. Okay, we've also seen some BCH accelerating in Argentina. That's another place that there's adoption seems to be going on. And I've got the video here, although we can't play it because I had the Instagram link, but I must be an idiot with Instagram because then it was the same link to the direct story, but then it got sort of replaced with something else. Here we go. Jet's going to explain to me, Boomer, why Instagram doesn't work.
So there's two possibilities. One, the story just disappeared, like it had been 24 hours or whatever, and that's gone now.
Yeah, probably that.
The second one is if you aren't logged in, I don't know, then Instagram will let you see like 2 or 3 posts, and that's it. Then they'll just say that you have to log in to see anything else, anything new.
I don't think it was that. I think it had
Okay.
just gone.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's this story that I saw of these two like young women who are apparently semi-famous or whatever Instagram influencers in the sort of libertarian movement in Argentina. Argentina obviously being home to a lot of, I guess, the libertarian thinking is much more mainstream in Argentina than most other places in the world. But it was great to see they just went into this shopping center. It was like shop, a supermarket, and they bought some, I don't know, beans or whatever, just some random things. And they went and paid for it by scanning the QR code on the wall and all that. And I just thought it was a perfect example of, I've never heard of them. They probably never heard of me. They don't know anything about necessarily all the deep story of all of this. All they know is, yeah, we want to have freedom money and this is it, and it's usable, and here it is. Go check it out, right? So not all the promotion, and in the end, most of the promotion of BCH is not going to come from what we think of, right, as the BCH community in quotation marks. That sort of core that we said that is running all the infrastructure and the servers and building the wallets and kickstarting the movement, yes. But it gets picked up by people with bigger voices, and they don't need to know all the details. All they need to know is you scan, pay, done, wasn't my fiat money, and it goes up, instead of going down. That's all they need to really know about it. And I just saw this was a perfect case of it because, yeah, it's just these young women who are not really the typical BCH demographic that will become the BCH demographic, but they need to hear it from somebody, that they can relate more to, and this was just a perfect case of that.
Yes, and I think also with what's happening now with Argentina, and we had a very good episode with Leo on a few weeks back, and this is where again we're seeing more utilization of Bitcoin Cash, as well as other projects as well. To be fair, they were using Tron, but this is where we're going to see the fundamentals and the real reason why Bitcoin was created was to basically give that new medium of exchange for the world when it really does need it. And I think now with various countries all around the world, we're starting to see that uptick in demand in transactions, and that is going to translate into market cap, and that's something we're really looking forward to seeing sort of in the future. But the main core thing is it's that usage in commerce that is the most important thing, and that's what will grow the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, that's the ultimate network effect. Like hype and podcasts and whatever can only get things so far. At the end of the day, you need people actually transacting, and that kind of speaks for itself. That makes a bigger impact than anything. Also, people, I'm just going to give a brief mention to this. I'm certainly not the one to talk to or to find out more about this from me, but there's this guy Javier Milei who is this kind of anarcho-capitalist guy who's now just shot to the lead in the polls in Argentina. It's been, a big story that's caught my attention, but for a lot of other people who maybe, haven't seen that, you should definitely look into it. He's just been coming out and saying like, look, let's literally just dismantle, like some of the most radical, policies you've heard, but not radical in terms of, wanting to be violent or anything like that, but just straight up like, loads of these government departments, they're useless. Like, let's just get rid of them. And this central bank, let's just like shut it down. At the moment, there's a big conversation in Argentina about dollarizing the whole economy and so forth. And for him, it's just more like, well, we'll just let the free market decide, but people are already using dollars, or maybe they use Bitcoin or whatever they're doing. And it's just come out, obviously, in a country like Argentina, only once things have got to quite a bad state are the population open-minded to, damn, we really need some different solutions. So maybe his more sort of out there or controversial way of presenting things, or his more severe takes on what it would take to fix the situation wouldn't vibe anywhere else necessarily, but in Argentina it's having a bit of a moment with that. So you should definitely look. He's very entertaining. So I highly recommend watching some of his clips. Maybe some people are listeners of this show, I doubt it, they're probably going to love it, but if you show it to your friends or something, they might be like, wow, this guy's a bit nuts. But he seems like a smart guy, and he's doing great work. And according to the BCH Argentina team, he is at least, obviously he knows about Bitcoin, but he is at least somewhat aware of Bitcoin Cash I've heard as well, too. I don't know how deep he is on all the crypto stuff, but that's certainly a part of it too. So I think we're getting a word in there. Do you know Javier Milei? Have you seen this?
I haven't heard of him before today, so I'll definitely sort of check him out, because I'm not too much from the ANCAP kind of community side of things on BCH. I'm more from the commercial sort of side and the sort of end user space. That's sort of really my main focus. But I would definitely check out Javier after this, probably later today. I'll check out his content.
Okay, we got community comment of the week. This is a good one. So we had a tweet here from Mr. Hoddle, who has quoted, he's taken a screenshot of Paul Stortz from the Drive Chains fame, who said on the 30th of July 2017, so this is 5 years back, this is a historical context, but Mr. Hoddle is quoting today this tweet from 2017, which says, from Paul Stortz, Bitcoin Cash could win. It's cheaper to use and decentralization is completely useless 99.9% of the time. Just hodl both. So obviously around the time of the split, Paul is advising the community, look, just play it safe. Like, you've got coins on both sides. Just leave it there. Maybe there's a chance that the market kind of goes in the Bitcoin Cash's favor, right? So now Mr. Hoddle, in the light of their current context of drive chains and so on, is then quoting him to say, look at this shitcoin. He always supported Bcash. He was a sleeper agent, this kind of vibe right to it. And then you have one quote higher, which is this guy, Polid, who's this huge fan of CTV and that I've, discussed with in the past. And this has also been notably retweeted. So there's 4 layers of discussion here by this guy, Zenda, who is also sort of in a similar vein to this Polid guy, saying, you're getting psyoped by the big blockers. So our master plan has been revealed here, where we've just maintained this currency for 6 years so that Paul Stortz could get quoted. And it's just funny because their own community drama and stuff, every time they try and do an upgrade, it turns into the bad guys of the Bcashes. You should go to Bitcoin Cash. I knew it. You were always a shitcoiner. You were a saboteur. Everything about that. And the funny thing is, it's not even that much of a joke, because definitely I, and I guess other people too, have been stirring the pot a little bit, because of course we can get in there and say, why don't you come join Bitcoin Cash? Or, well, how are you planning to make any forward progress? Or just mixing in a bit of drama here and there as we can get our 10 sats in. Perfect. Because it's all just Streisand effect. It's all just more and more hype for BCH, and it's just so funny that he was even, in quoting this and pointing this out, he's also adding to the network effect. So it's kind of like there's no way for them to beat us if we're always just part of the discussion. So I thought this was quite funny.
It's quite interesting. I got sort of a few thoughts in this one, and of course, there's a side, of course, from the BTC clan where they sort of label the Bitcoin Cash gang as the bad guys and so on, because potentially we are the competition, and we're the competition with the working blockchain. However, what I would like to maybe give Paul, flip this discussion a tiny bit on its head and give Paul Stortz a little bit of credit, because what he's doing is he goes, Bitcoin Cash could win. So in the back of his mind, he's thinking, holy smokes, we've got a working blockchain. The Bcashes have got a working blockchain. They're transacting more than any other blockchain there in terms of commercial transactions. They've got a really good chance of winning there. So I think he's putting that out there, and he's sort of hedging his bets basically to say, look, you want to hold a bit of both, but there's one.
But this is from 5 years ago, right?
Yes.
So he said that 5 years ago, and he knew at the time of the split, which was correct. Like, in hindsight, that was amazing advice, right?
Yes.
Like, I don't know that there was all that many people saying go all in on BCH, but certainly there was plenty of people saying quick, sell all your Bcash and just get BTC, right? And some of those people missed sort of the biggest pump, or now if they miss the chance to buy back in, they'll miss the whole thing, right?
Yes, that's right. And one thing though, Paul Stortz did miss out there was he said hodl both. But the thing is, we don't want to hodl. We want to sort of spend and replace, but at the same time, maybe save a bit or stack sats, but use it as a regular currency, just like how we'd use pounds and dollars. Yeah, I think Paul, it sounds like he's got the right idea. I think Paul has got the right idea, but yeah, it'll be interesting to sort of see the narrative as that ratio of BTC and Bitcoin Cash gets nearer that 1-to-1, what all these other big influencers will be saying. And in fact, this was a bit of a tease, because one thing I wanted to do, and I'd actually done it as a YouTube Shorts video, was I took it was a bit of a tease to what was his name, the big YouTube guy, Mr. Beast, and I kind of said, "Oh, I bet Mr. Beast doesn't know about cash rain and so on." And it was a little bit of a teaser, actually, because I just wanted to push it in front of Mr. Beast's nose. And then I think what happened was a couple of days later, actually, Kim.com said, "Okay, look, we're rolling out the testing of cash rain. It's soon going to be getting to the big influencers." So we can see that potentially that huge network effect, where if someone like Mr. Beast subscribers did actually use cash rain, he's got 175 million subs. He's got more followers than most countries have citizens. So potentially, even if it will say 10%, that's still 17 million users. That's a lot of transactions. So this is potentially where we can see cash rain being a very, very useful tool in the future, where it would be used to distribute rains to people all around the world at the same time. It's wonderful. We've never seen capital move like that at any time in human history. So it's really amazing.
Do you have any thoughts on the whole drive chains thing and how that's playing out? Do you think that they're going to have to sort of split off to get things their way? Do you think eventually they'll just get shouted down and told to piss off? Do you think they'll convert over to BCH? What do you see coming there?
Potentially, with the drive chains in the future, I think they may have to splinter off, because you'll have these hardcore maximalists that don't want to change anything, and we've seen it now with the had a bit of a brain freeze, but we saw it with the ordinals.
Yeah,
and we're going to see exactly history repeat again. The BTC maxis are not your friends, guys. So I think come over to the Bitcoin Cash team. We do like innovation. We do accept all ideas on board. I think you use your talents there. That's what I would say is, yeah. We can actually use your skill sets and grow things that way. We won't shut down ideas completely. We'll listen to all points of view, and there's definitely use cases, and there's necessity for these other solutions, but that can be built on Bitcoin Cash. Come aboard.
Yeah, Jet says they're not even their own friends, and that's really the truth of the matter. And kind of the ironic thing is they like it that way. And Bitcoin is supposed to be anti-fragile. It is supposed to be decentralized and so on. But the BTC side have got the wrong idea that means it needs to be confused. They think that confusion is like decentralization. If nobody knows what's happening, that's decentralized, not related, really. And they also think that if there's a lot of arguing, there's a lot of contention and conflict, that's also decentralized. Well, that's not really the case either. Like, you can have things that are, for instance, English is decentralized, maths is decentralized, but nobody's arguing over that, certainly not in any great amount, right? Just it is what it is, and it all just works. And crypto can be the exact same. And I think it's a very valuable point that the ordinals side of things does show how it went, because firstly, ordinals is now completely out of the discussion. Who's talking about that? Nobody. Everybody's talking about these drive chains and CTV and other things. And then did they ever get any change in? Well, no, because the ordinals came in sort of by accident. But if they'd had to split off to their own chain, they didn't try that. They didn't, go that deep in the paint, basically. So it's just kind of like, well, time kind of moves on. A new thing becomes the story of the week, and a new thing gets everyone's attention. And so if Paul is not jumping on this chance now, like if he wants to do a split, now is probably the best time as ever, because if he waits later, it'll kind of fade out of view and everybody will think, yeah, drive chains, we kind of ignored that and it was fine, right? So now's his chance. But also now is probably also the worst time for him to do it, because opposition is at a maximum, right? So he'll get flooded with that. Now, he messaged me last night. I was surprised and said, you should have me back on the show. You should come back on the Bitcoin Cash podcast. And I mean, we'll see. I'll chat to him and see about that. But I think my answer is probably no. Not until something changes. Like if he wants to come and roast the Bitcoin Max, he could do that on his own time, right? If something changes, if he has this debate with Peter Todd, if they do their own fork, if there was some drama with the miners, if there was anything like substantial and worth discussing, obviously I'm happy to talk to him. But I just found it funny that he's obviously trying to use it as a bit of an outlet, to poke it in the eyes of the laser eyes and give them a sense like, shit, if we don't get our act together, the altcoins are going to overtake us. But to me, that's already obvious, and I've already told him that. So I don't know why we'd need to. We've got loads of content for this show, loads of other people we need to talk to. So I don't think we're really going to spend any more time on that than necessary, unless things substantially change there. Really. All right, we got meme of the week. What is said is not always what is meant. So somebody had made a nice crypto company announcement translation guide. So this was pretty good because crypto, like everything else, is land of the double speak, especially these days. So they've got on the left, they've got a series of what is said, what the influence is, and whoever announces. And then on the right is what it actually means. So the first one is, today is my last day at somewhere. I am excited to spend more time with my family and working on new projects. Of course, what that actually means is I'm quitting somewhere because of massive fraud and looming legal actions. So yeah, once the tweets come out like, I'm just moving on. Well, that's true in any company, I think, not even just in crypto, right?
Yes, and that's right. In most cases, it comes down to politics. But I think in the case of this, and in fact, actually, the way this is worded is, I think it's the correct thing to do, even from principle. So if anyone's working in a company and there is a financial malpractice going on, best thing to do, walk away.
Get yourself out of there.
Get yourself out of there, because always companies have a way of pushing it back on the employee. And then you've got these departments like HR where their job is basically to make sure that companies do not get sued. So yeah, safest things, just walk away from the company, word it in a really nice way like that way, because of course you want to have that reference, but just walk away safely.
We've got the next one is, quote, we are excited to announce our expansion to Island Nation, end quotes. That would be like St. Kitts or somewhere. And the translation is, we are under investigation by the CFTC. And that's obviously just a case of companies often doing, especially in crypto, obviously making a big, exciting announcement to try and distract from or cover up any other bad news, right? So you do see that everywhere too. Then the next one is, quote, we are excited to announce our expansion to the UK, end quote. And the translation is, quote, we are under investigation by the SEC, end quote. So again, the same theme, but companies always seem to, like Coinbase have been doing that recently. Yes. Other companies, they move out of the US to the UK because obviously it's a similar jurisdiction. But if the SEC is trying to fuck around with them, well, in the UK, obviously they're protected from that. Okay, the next one is, quote, decentralizing something, end quote. And the translation is, founders and investors are ready to dump their tokens on you. So I enjoyed that one. The next one is, the path to decentralization and handover to the community for something is now complete. And the translation is, devs have finished dumping their tokens and are now ready to stop working. So I'll think that's perfect for any of those, like dog tokens or whatever. Like, we've handed over to the community is like, we're out, guys. The rug's done. We've made our bag.
Sheep and Doge, yeah.
That's it. It's now the community, quote unquote. Okay, we have no exposure to something, quote, translates as, we have massive undisclosed exposure to something. Of course, just like with Three Arrows Capital and all that, we saw, no, we're not related to them. We don't have any loans. We're totally safe, which is what they say every time. All the money's there. Funds are safe, etc. And then in the end, of course, they never are safe. And then finally, operations continue as normal, end quote, translates to bankruptcy filing is imminent, end quote. So I like that one as well too, because that's like, if you need to be saying that operations are continuing as normal, they're obviously not, because if they are, you don't even need to say it. It's just expected, right?
Yes.
So
There's just one thing before we go over to the next slide, if that's okay, Jeremy. Now, there was one good example of that, and we see it all the time in crypto. But with that malpractice one, we had that case of I think it was Nexo, with one of the co-founders was complaining, I think, that they were manipulating Chainlink, trying to get people to sell Chainlink so they could buy it at a lower price. And I think one of the co-founders was complaining about that, saying, "Hey, this is malpractice, not allowed." And again, this is a typical example of what we see in crypto. Sort of, So it's
all the same financial, shenanigans are always ongoing, perpetually, everywhere and forever. Right, we've got our message to the community. This is your chance. You got your open slather. What do you think the community needs to hear?
I'd just like to say thank you so much, Jeremy and Jet, for having me on today. I think we are now at a crucial time in human history. This now only happens, what we're seeing now with the whole financial markets only happens once in a lifetime, if that. Now, the baby boomers have not seen a new financial system come for their whole lifetime. So fiat is long overdue. We're in a very, very special moment here. This is something we're definitely going to remember. Our children are going to remember. And I think this is something where we can do more to drive this forward. Now, my message is, I think, guys, we need to start to use a technical term, broadcasting our transactions. Now, I know I'm not the best orator in the Bitcoin Cash community. There are many better speakers than me. I don't even have the best kit for doing my videos. I've just got here, it's just a 1+8T, nothing fancy. This is probably about 2-3 years old now. And I'm using this to vlog. And I've got a fairly small voice. Hopefully over time, my voice will grow louder and louder. But all I want to do is just push the message of having this alternative to the fiat currency, and an alternative that works. And this is also part of my vlog that I want to do as well, to sort of say, hey, look, let's spend Bitcoin Cash. I came down here now to see Jeremy. I bought fuel, paid for it by Morrison's with Bitcoin Cash. This every single day now, I'm finding reasons to spend it and integrate it in my daily life. And I think now we can basically highlight all these sort of transactions we're doing and sort of get a bit more chatty, both in the Twitter spaces and in YouTube, on Twitch, and all these other forums. And we then bring it to market, because once we get to that potential area of, we have about 10% of the world using Bitcoin Cash, it's going to roll automatically. People are going to be using it in their day-to-day lives. And we're going to start to see that momentum build as fiat gets devalued more and more, because the incentive to use a better money system will be there. And that's sort of my message.
Give a quick shout out to what's the service that you use for the gas, like you were telling me about.
So I use this website. I'm based in the UK. I use a website called giftoff.com, giftoff.com, and they allow you to convert your Bitcoin Cash into Morrison's credit, and you can basically then swap that Morrison's credit and buy any fuel, like not just fuel, but Morrison's is a supermarket chain as well, so you can buy any product you like with Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, damn, I'm gonna have to look into that. I don't know if there's a Morrison's nearby, but I'm sure there would be, probably, if I look around.
It's fairly dotted around. Yeah, I think there'll probably be Winchester, or there'll be some around.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, coming into the end of the show, obviously we have to give our supporter appreciation. As always, thank you very much to our donators. You're the best. Thank you to our patrons, Ricky and HP. Thank you to our sponsors, General Protocols. Go check out bchbull.com. And thank you to our Flipstarter contributors as well, Bitcoin Jason, go check out Townsville and have a Bitcoin Cash holiday. Ray might be seeing you soon, mate.
Thank you.
If the opportunity presents itself, no promises. Shadow of Harbinger, Molecular Emergent Reasons, who I can see in the chat calling out Charlie Lee for pulling off the original handover to the community. Classic one. Yep, dumped his bags on those Litecoin chicken plebs. We've got Erdogan talk and Majamalhu Marcelo as well, too, who has recently done, you should check out No Hay Almuerzo Gratis. There's no such thing as a free lunch, which is his Spanish podcast about Bitcoin Cash. And he's done a 2-part series where he's reviewed my debate with Paul Stortz. Very topical as well, too. So if you speak Spanish, go check that out, or you can probably just switch on the YouTube auto translate and maybe just listen along and see how you do. But he's also talking to me. I might go on his show as well too and bust out a bit of the Spanish as much as I'm able to do. So yeah, looking forward to that, and go check that out, certainly if you speak Spanish. So thank you everybody for watching. We got the start guide, FAQs, links and so forth at bitcoincashpodcast.com. You can also go do this survey, the listener survey, bitcoincashpodcast.com/survey, SURVEY. And final shout outs. Ray, who do you want to give a mention to?
I'd like to give out three shout outs if I may. First of all, thank you so much, Jeremy and Jet, for having me on today.
You're welcome.
It's been great. Thank you. Second, I'd like to say a huge shout out to my sidekick, well, my daughter. She's been in half my videos. You've probably seen her. She and myself walking around all around the UK and in some other countries too. And there's so many other people I want to give a shout out to, but I think I'll sort of condense it all and say into one shout out. And I'd like to say to Bitcoin Jason and the whole Bitcoin Cash community, really well done, guys. We're just seeing some great work here. Let's keep going. Let's keep building. Let's keep driving peer-to-peer cash forward for the whole world. Thank you.
Jet, do you have any shout outs? Not this week. All right. And my shout out goes to any new projects that are joining the scene. So obviously we have Cake Wallet potentially getting a part of things. Obviously we have Cash Ninjas, even if that was those guys who were already about a bit in BCH, but spinning up a new project deserves recognition. And Stack Wallet, if they're also adding cash tokens integrations and becoming part more and more of the BCH scene, I absolutely love to see it. I love to say that I predicted in the show over the last year or more, that things would turn around for the community and we would start to see more and more action and activity and network effect building, because that's what happens when you have stability. First, you need, when you have contention and fighting and arguing, well, that just drives people away because it's just a toxic mess. It's worse than Burning Man. So people are not incentivized to be a part of it. But when things are stable, then there's a period of quiet as everybody, kind of recovers and builds up more morale. And then obviously you start to come into the grassroots and momentum where plants start to grow again. I think it's like a bushfire, right? I'm Australian, so I always think of it like that. You burn away all the undergrowth, it's all black and charred, but then you start to get some green shoots come through, and then soon enough you have a whole kind of forest growing out of it. So we're gonna be coming into a stage where those early projects which are joining the scene will be attracting more projects, and the scene is going to grow at a faster and faster rate. And it only takes a few of those small shoots. Most of the action is happening underground. That's what's happening with our messaging, with talking to different people, with different parts of the community, putting up public results. That attracts notice, even if we don't realize that that's what's happening, but it is. And along with the ongoing collapse of other narratives in other communities and the introduction of CBDCs, it's just a perfect storm, really. So yeah, everybody just keep doing what we're doing. And if any new projects or companies are joining the scene, welcome. And everybody, please go out of your way to be friendly and engage with those projects, give them early feedback and so forth, because then that just encourages them to be more and more a part of it. All right. I think that'll do it today. Thank you for listening. And until next time. Thanks, everyone in the chat.
So I started realizing that if you can just find strength just a little bit longer, you will have a crew of people following you along the way.
And that is another thing that no one can ever teach you. Because you're going to have to learn that on your own. You're going to have to figure out how to pull that energy out of your mind on your own. There's no book you can read that all of a sudden I have it. I've got the technique now. I know how to do it.
Yeah.
No, it's a grind that you have to start and finish on your own.